Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Our top stories tonight. There are calls for more public transport firms to cut fares to boost the nighttime economy. Economic growth on the mainland shows signs of improvement. And the death toll in the floods that ravaged the Libyan town of Derna has jumped to over 11,000. The government says it will not force transport firms to offer fare discounts to help the Night Vibes Hong Kong campaign. Deputy Financial Secretary Michael Wong added that food bazaars at promenades will not steal customers from restaurants. Macy Mock reports.
The MTR is contributing to the government's Night Vibes Hong Kong campaign by offering one free trip for every 5 journeys completed after 10:30 p.m. But lawmaker Michael Tian says that's not enough. He urged the railway operator and other public transport companies to charge half fares after 10 p.m. In response, Deputy Financial Secretary Michael Wong said the government will not force transport firms to offer incentives. Shortly after, KMB said it may offer discounts on routes that have stops at promenades that will host food bazaars. Wong dismissed suggestions that restaurants will lose customers when the harbourfront food courts are up and running. Instead, he said eateries near the promenades in Wan Chai, Kennedy Town and Kwun Tong will benefit as people are expected to flock to performances that will be staged there. Wong denied that the government resorted to so-called white lions used in funerals for the lion dance at the launch of the campaign last night, saying they were neon lions. Critics have said the campaign to boost the nighttime economy includes established events such as the National Day fireworks display, but Wong said those will be improved. The 23-minute fireworks display over Victoria Harbour begins at 9 p.m. on October the 1st. There will be 8 themes, including one called Hello Hong Kong, Happy Hong Kong, where rockets will burst into smiley faces in the night sky. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
The chief executive has paid a 2-hour visit to Phuoc Lai Estate in Tsuen Wan to seek views for his policy address next month. John Lee headed to 2 centers for the elderly to ask carers about the difficulties and the services they offer. He said a 24-hour hotline and website for caregivers will be launched soon. Related information will be gathered on the website, while carers can turn to the hotline for help and inquiries, Lee added. Earlier, he ran into a group of students. Primary 5 student Jaden said he felt emotional at being able to meet Hong Kong's leader. Hong Kong is returning to normal following the recent rainstorms. 2 schools in Shau Kei Wan resumed on-campus learning, while Shek Op Road reopened with special arrangements on a section that collapsed. Janice Low reports.
Salesian School and its adjoining secondary section, Salesian English School, were among those severely affected by the once-in-a-century rainstorm last Friday. Teaching had to be conducted online after most of their pavement bricks were washed away and the campuses were flooded. But today, students could finally return to class. This Form 5 student was thrilled to be back, pointing out that he couldn't learn much from virtual classes. I feel terrified. I never thought that the downpours could cause our playground and newly renovated library to be flooded, he said. The pavement outside the 2 schools has not been fully repaired and has been temporarily covered in asphalt. At least it is better than before, right? The second former asked. Some students volunteered to help in the cleanup. Salesian School Principal Karen Chan believes it would take a while to repair flooded facilities, including the multi-usage and PE rooms on the ground floor. Traffic, meanwhile, resumed on Shekel Road, allowing single-deck buses and light vehicles to pass through. But the one-lane two-way traffic arrangement was implemented on part of the road which subsided. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The final print edition of the Chinese-language free newspaper Sky Post rolled off the press today. Hundreds of people queued outside a mall in Kuntong to get the last copy. Some were saddened that the tabloid has folded after 12 years. The Hong Kong Economic Times said its decision to stop the print edition was because of what it called market developments. Sky Post appeared on the streets in July 2011 with a print run of 450,000 daily. It will be available online with the focus on health, entertainment and lifestyle news. Only AM 730 and the Headline Daily remain as free Chinese language newspapers. China's economy shows signs of improvement after a set of positive data from last month. This came as stimulus measures were launched piecemeal. Since the Politburo met in July to assess the economic situation, China has made gradual adjustments to strengthen weak sentiment and consumption. Measures ranging from encouraging electronic sales to supporting the private economy are now paying dividends, with retail sales and industrial output growth gaining ground. Industrial output last month climbed 4.5% from a year ago, much faster than the 3.7% rise in July and beating growth estimates of 3.9%. Retail sales jumped 4.6%, up 2.1% from July and against market estimates of 3%. And an increase in consumer prices eased deflationary pressure.
市场价格的温和上涨呢，有利于消费的增长。
National Bureau of Statistics spokesman Fu Linghui said the gains helped to stabilize the markets. But fixed asset investment continued to slow, despite Beijing's efforts to end the real estate debt crisis. It rose only 3.2% year-on-year in the first 8 months of the year, from the same period last year, compared with 3.4% growth in the first 7 months. Authorities have tried to shore up the property sector with measures such as removing certain purchasing limits and slashing down payments and mortgage rates. But they need time to bear fruit, and property investment continued to worsen, falling 8.8% in the first 8 months of the year, its worst performance since December. New home prices in 70 cities meanwhile dropped 0.3% to a 10-month low. The central bank earlier cut the reserve requirement ratio by 0.25 percentage points to facilitate fiscal stimulus. With the jobless rate at 5.2%, the markets are waiting for stronger measures to reform the economy. Overseas, rescue teams are still desperately struggling to help survivors and search for the missing, 5 days after deadly floods devastated eastern Libya. The death toll in the coastal city of Derna has jumped to 11,300 as Libya's 2 rival governments try to coordinate aid relief. Azam Khan reports.
Suffering on an unimaginable scale continues to afflict Libya as international and local rescue teams desperately search for survivors in Derna. The eastern port city was the hardest hit by Storm Daniel that struck earlier this week, bursting 2 dams and triggering devastating floods. Over 11,000 people were killed in Derna alone, amid fears that the final tally could surpass 20,000. The logistical problems and lack of proper infrastructure have made it extremely difficult for much-needed international aid to reach the victims. It is a grim reality for a country consumed in civil strife and infighting for years, since the overthrow of long-term leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011 by a Western-backed coalition. The 2 rival administrations that have since emerged have put aside their power struggle and are now frantically coordinating relief efforts for the victims of the country's worst natural disaster. Meanwhile, there is talk of establishing an international sea corridor to streamline aid to the northwestern African nation. With tens of thousands of people homeless and over a fifth of the city destroyed, there are rumors to completely evacuate Derna. Asum Khan, HKIBC.
U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, has been charged with 3 counts of making false statements after apparently deceiving a gun dealer.
What Hunter Biden is accused of is lying on a federal form to purchase a firearm. And those forms ask you about your drug use. And the allegation is that Hunter Biden lied on that form by saying that he was not using drugs, when at the time he has openly admitted, including in a book that he wrote about his life, that he was in fact struggling with the crack cocaine addiction right at that time.
Hunter Biden is expected to appear in court in the near future. The 53-year-old was charged after a plea deal collapsed. It's the first time a child of a sitting president has been charged, and the repercussions could affect Joe Biden's re-election bid next year. Nearly 13,000 workers are on strike at 3 factories belonging to U.S. car makers Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. The strikers are demanding better pay and working conditions, noting that auto executives have been taking home massive pay packets.
They've had a decade of record profits. When they're profitable, it's all theirs. They want to keep it all. And the sad reality is, they've made $250 billion, the big three have, in the last decade. CEO pay went up 40%. Nobody cried a river, but by God, when workers ask for their fair share, it's the end of the world.
It was the first time in the union's 88-year history that workers from the 3 auto giants staged a simultaneous strike. The stoppage is taking place at 3 plants only, but the union warned that its action could be extended. Car prices could rise if the strike is prolonged because the supply will dwindle. And now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed up 134 points. Top 10 active stocks: Tencent down $2.60, Alibaba up 35 cents, and ZTO Express up $11.60. Meituan up $1.30, AIA up $1, and CCB up just 3 cents. Forex trading against Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.34, British pound at 9.71, and Australian dollar at 5.05. Moving on to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently up 60 points. Local economists say the Night Vibes Hong Kong campaign may not contribute much to real GDP growth.
If you go to Bangkok, go to some tourist place in our country, they have a night economy, but the GDP growth may not be that high. So it's not that totally related to the growth of the economy, but it will make people feel better. We are very different from what we were before. Not because we don't have enough shops, enough restaurants open at night. There are some structural changes in the Hong Kong situation and Hong Kong economy.
Chung said the initiative will have a social impact, such as creating harmony and a better atmosphere for tourists. You can watch the full interview on HKIBC's All About Money program on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. on Channel 76. On to the weather now. Mainly cloudy with occasional showers tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 26 and 29 degrees. Overcast with sunny intervals in the following couple of days. And that is our main news for Friday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Thank you for watching. Good night.